my right.
Yes,
I was involved in a project set up by Mark Andrews from Budapest, principally covering Central Europe, and I think there were some people from Poland involved. And it started out, it was called A November to Remember. So it was November 2.5 years ago, just over 2 years ago. It was a way of bringing together teachers and teacher trainers from a range of countries who Mark was involved with through the SOL organization. And the idea, first of all, was to set up weekly meetings online. And I was in the opening one along with Peter Medgyes, who's an old friend and whose non-native teacher book I published a few years ago. And, you know, Peter and I did our welcome to the course thing, and people seemed quite enthusiastic and so on. And then there was something else a week later and something else a week later. And then I got a phone call from Mark saying, Susan, actually what people really want is just keeping in touch with each other. That teachers now, having to teach online, not able to go into the classroom, are feeling very, very isolated. And we think that the course, or whatever it was called, should develop more into a teacher support thing. And I thought that was a great idea. And what was interesting over, I think, the 4 months that it ran, was that more and more, when I saw the faces on screen, and there were lots of us, you know, old colleagues, people from New Zealand or from all over the place coming in and providing a bit of input. But actually, you could see from people's faces what they wanted was the feeling of being connected with colleagues, people in other places, people who understand the life problems that they were going through. So yes, it might be might focus on language a little bit, but it soon went into, and you know, what about your problem, and how do you solve that, and what do you have with it, what happens when the computer link goes down, and what happens with the students who don't have a computer link, don't have computers. And it became a much more convivial, usually most people with a glass of wine in their hands, I may say, but it was very relaxed. And I felt that in human terms, that is what a group of professionals, probably 30, 40 from different countries, that's what they needed at the moment. And I agreed. I mean, it helped me to think about things, hearing about people's organizations and situations. So I think at the moment, for any of you who are running training courses and teachers meetings and involved in teachers associations, local, national, one day maybe international, the question to ask yourself is not necessarily just what is the academic use of this, or what is the language use of this. It's what's the effect of this on teachers' self-confidence. The feeling that, I mean, I'm sure you've all been in the position where I've been, where you've done a lesson, you're teaching, you've done a lesson, it doesn't go well, you know it's not going well, but you keep an eye on the clock and you think, oh, only another 10 minutes. And you actually need somebody to talk to about that. And I think this building up, this bonding, this building up of trust in other colleagues is really, really important. And I think it's something that maybe we've been reminded about because of the COVID thing. And maybe it's something that we need to tap into. It'll be different for all of us, but I'm sure that it's worth thinking about. And that's where I think life is probably more important than how you teach phrasal verbs. Okay, and the last one of this little series is course material, because I mentioned at the moment, no, it's fine. Number 5, the next one.
Oh, okay, number 5, thank you.
I mentioned course material, ways of bringing it to life. Focus on the people, focus on the topics, try and relate those as much as possible to your particular students and particular situations. Okay, so that's language and life. You know, that was the focus of the articles I wrote for the two teachers magazines almost a year ago. And then we all know that life intrudes on language. Life intrudes on all of us. And in March 2022, so 10 months ago, I saw a post on Facebook posted by a Slovak colleague, which moved me a lot. And the first one, it was written by a teacher on the 4th of March 2022. 9 days ago, I thought that my job as a teacher was to teach English, simply teach the subject. Next one. 9 days ago, I encouraged my students to use their critical thinking skills to make thoughtful decisions and draw conclusions. Today, my job as a teacher is to make sure that all the children get to the shelter when the siren goes off. And I found that very, very moving. It's so understated, and yet it's presenting a moment in life, a moment in the professional life of a teacher and her, I think it was a female, her students. So it seems to me that we've all gone through the COVID experience, and it will have affected us in different ways as our learners will have been affected. Some of us have been affected very directly by what is going on in Ukraine. Others, like people here in Scotland, much more indirectly. Scotland is one of the places that has actually welcomed quite a lot of people from the Ukraine. And what has been interesting and sometimes a bit sad over the 6 months since they've been here, a bit more than 6 months now, is how attitudes have changed. At first, there was a huge amount of sympathy from the Scottish families for those people they were hosting. And I, because I've lived in various places and I know about cultural differences, I said, you know, there may be problems. It's not all going to be wonderful. They came, a lot of them came in the summer when in Scotland, even in Scotland, the weather is good, the sun shines, it's warm. They were taken out to see lochs and mountains and so on. And then one could see, and I heard from people I know, that suddenly, gradually, the relationships began breaking down. I think the people who had come from Ukraine were getting more and more and more worried about what was going on at home, and people who had given giving them shelter, space in their houses, was suddenly finding, you know, having two people you don't know at all staying in your house, you know, it can be nice, but it can be quite a strain. And again, it was the human thing, it's the human relationships thing that has worked through, and something that I think we need to be aware of. So what is good now is that more and more people are being realistic about what to expect and what they can give. So that has impacted on all of us, these two things. So going back to language and life, I think the questions all of us need to ask is, how will this reality affect us as people and professionals? Also, next one, how will it affect our learners? Because our learners, whoever they are, whether they are middle-aged business people, whether they're 7-year-old kids, whether people in high school, they are being affected by the things that are going on outside the classroom, outside the textbook, in the same way that we are as individuals. And I think the more that we can think about this and find ways of building on it and using it productively, the more valuable it is in human terms and in professional terms. And I think the third line there is an important one, and something that I have spent a little bit of time in a couple of sessions looking at is how is language being used to convince, contradict, persuade, and accuse? Because as things get nastier, certainly here on social media, even on the news, the language that is being used by a lot of people is getting more and more diverse, more and more separated. And if we're going to live in this world, people need to be able to cope with it. A business person traveling in Europe at the moment, you know, will hear a lot of things that she or he doesn't particularly want to hear, and they need to know how to cope with it. So this is only my feeling, but more and more the links we can make between what is happening in your own language and society context and what might be happening with the use of English needs a bit of thinking about. I think that there could be some fascinating course material written there, but I'm not going to offer to do it. And the reason I mention course material is that, next one, that I'm conscious that we are a collection of different people brought together by teaching English, but we may be here as teachers, we may be writers, we may be publishers, we may be students, but all of us are people. So, next one.
Maybe this one, yes.
He's doing something funny. Okay, yes. Okay, so thinking ahead, can you predict where language and life will be when it's time for the next IATEFL Poland conference? That's quite a challenge. We're thinking, presumably, to September next year. What's going to happen in the next 6 months? How is life going to change? How might language change? What will be important for you as a person and as a professional? Because, you know, like most good professionals, we do plan what we're going to do, but we need to keep doors open for variety. And if we can make, oh, well, Rob thinks everything will be wonderful, good. Optimist. And it would be fun if we could check these predictions against the actual reality at the time. So make your own language and life predictions here or somewhere else based on other developments. Okay, right. Next one, something odd. Now I've gone back to the original slide, the opening one, which is language and life, life and language, implications, language, life, teacher interaction and support, projects, and you. And the "and you" thing is, I think, very important. So going on to the next one. I wonder if you would mind spending just a couple of minutes thinking about your attitude now, or at any point in the past, to things like language, people, cultures, objectivity, subjectivity, communication needs, pressures, time, objectives, and so on. Because thinking about these things will have shaped how you've got to the point you are at the moment with English, the language that you're teaching or involved in some way. It will also probably shape your thoughts in the future. And just to give you an example of, you know, this is not academic, it's very personal, but language is personal. I was asked a couple of weeks ago to write for somebody who was writing some academic article about my relationship with languages over the years. Well, given that I've been around for a lot of years, I thought, oh my God, where do I begin? And I've just jotted down some of the things that I said to this person. I first visited a foreign country in France. I did French as the first foreign language at school as a preparation for exams. And I worked as an au pair in 2 families. And my French was quite good, she says proudly. The first family, they changed over. There was 2 weeks with one, 2 weeks with another. First family were great. We got on very well. I think my French improved. Second family, I disliked intensely, and I think they disliked me. Nothing worked. I don't know what it was. I was 18. I obviously thought I was very good at French and so on and so forth. But my reaction to the people had an effect on my use of French, because suddenly the language that I really was being pretty competent with in communication a week earlier suddenly went downhill. And in fact, it was so bad, I got on a train in those days and went home. And one of I then actually spent some time in Paris as a student, again as an au pair. And what that reminded me was the difference between child language and behavior and parent language and behavior and formal or semi-formal language and behavior. And this, I think, is something, again, it goes back to dialogues in course books. You know, this is something one can play around with, that you have the very formal people, certainly in a business English context, you know, how are you both formal and friendly at the same time? I did some work about 20 years ago with a German publisher, and I used to go, they were based outside Munich, and I used to go there every month for a meeting. And what happened was that I would usually arrive early evening, and we'd go to the local pub, bar, Weinkeller, and so on. And everybody was on first name terms. And then and it was all friendly, and it was Heinrich this and Susan that, etc., etc. I turn up at the meeting in the morning, and it was Herr this, Professor this, Frau this, and very, very formal, which wouldn't have happened in Britain. So or mostly not have happened in Britain. So an awareness of the cultural demands or cultural context in which the language is going to be used by your learners is, I think, very important. I noted down various other things. I actually went to live and work in Italy for quite a bit, and also in Montreal. Quebec was interesting. I was based in a university in Quebec, and I was involved in, they did an MEd, and I was involved in teaching practice. So I went, it was fascinating because I could go and observe the teaching going on in schools. And I don't know if any of you have been to Montreal, and I haven't been for 20 years, but then it was very much divided into the English speaking part and the French speaking part, and French included Italian and Spanish and so on. And I remember going to watch a lesson in a school in the French part, and I wanted to be friendly in my British way to the kids as they were leaving. And I think it was about an 11-year-old child said something like, "Bonjour, madame." And I said in English, "It must be so nice here, so good for you, having all these television channels to look at. So you can see programs in English as well as French, which, you know, is obviously good for your English in a patronizing teacher training way." And this boy, I can picture him now. He turned around and he looked at me and he said, "Madame," in French, "if my dad caught me watching English television, he would hit me." And that's remained with me as you know, it's not admirable, but it's an example of how the culture, the family culture, the cultural expectations affect behavior. And I think, you know, this is the context in which a lot of language is being produced. And I think in terms of publishing and producing materials, this is something that needs to be, this cultural aspect needs to be thought about much more, in much more depth. And one of the other areas, apart from Central Europe, where I've worked quite a lot, is Brazil, of all sorts of strange reasons. But I've spent a lot of time in Brazil over the last 35 years, not very happy with what's going on at the moment. And it meant I spent a lot of time both observing classes in public schools with 40, 50 students where the teacher didn't really speak very much English and was obviously very nervous about having a foreigner sitting there, however much I smiled. That reality and thinking about what kind of materials would be useful for these people, and then going into the very, very upmarket 6 students in a class, cultura inglesa, I'm exaggerating, 10 students in a class, but private language sector in places like Sao Paulo and Rio. And realizing how important it is when you're producing material to start with the users, to start with the people and the context. It's not how best to get over the third conditional. It's what do these people, potential users of the language, what do they need? How can I help them to achieve something within what they can need? Now, what they can do. The problem, of course, here is school curricula and exams, because they are very often very prescriptive and they don't allow this kind of freedom. But I think it's something with materials I always try to stress and make sure that is there. And I had I'll give you one more example from Brazil. I had a fascinating experience just before Brazil got the last World Cup soccer. Most of the projects I've been involved in were either for state school or language institute use. And then a colleague who ran the Macmillan office in Sao Paulo said, "Hey, Susan, we've got the World Cup coming next year. There are going to be people coming from all over the world, all kinds of different places, and they're going to need to interact with hotels and taxi drivers, maybe sometimes hotel first aid posts. They're wanting to go to shopping malls. And most of the people who work in places like that, in other words, are involved with service English, won't have done language at school, because that's something that you do when you go to university. You know, that's for academics. If you're working in a shopping mall and 2 Japanese come up in front of you and speak in English, how are you going to cope with that? So I had a fascinating few months. Every time I went over, I was doing a big consultancy, and actually that's when I met Rob. I would sit in shopping malls or bars or restaurants or take the odd taxi and just look at the communication, look at what was going on, look at what it was that made the person on the reception desk or the person trying to sell something be a good communicator, and what made the visitors a good communicator or a bad communicator. And very often they were bad communicators, because I think we don't realize when we're using a language, a foreign language or our own language in another context with another person, that there are all sorts of unknown things, and smiling at people is actually quite important. I witnessed, I didn't take photographs because I thought that would be intrusive, but I noticed how bad the behavior, how aggressive some of the body language was of some of the visitors. So again, that's sort of food for thought, especially if you're dealing with adults who are going to be interacting with other nationalities. So that is my suggestion, just finishing off, of things to think about in terms of yourself, your own students, if you're training teachers, them, and making them think about themselves and real life. And just going on to the final 2 slides, this is the commercial bit. This sort of attitude of asking questions about language and contexts is something that I believe in very, very strongly. So 2.5 years ago, I, with a Brazilian colleague, wrote this methodology book, Teaching English Today, which actually is a whole series of questions. It's not Susan says do this, it's Susan said, have you thought about this? What do you think about that? Can you discuss it and come back to it and tell me it's rubbish? So that approach to teacher training is one that you may think is relevant to you or not. And the second one, the final one, which I've referred to, which I'm very proud actually of having published, is Peter Medgyes' Non-Native Teacher. I was involved in the very first edition of this way back in 92, 93 at Macmillan, when there was this huge need for saying that non-native speaker teachers had just as much to offer as native speaker teachers. And both Peter and I thought that attitude had gone, as it were, after the backpacking days of the 90s. But about 5 years ago, I was in Brazil and the British Council had just done a survey and discovered that everybody they surveyed, maybe it was because the survey came from the British Council, but everybody was saying, oh no, the native speaker teacher is better. And both Peter and I said, no way, the world needs both of us. And that's why there was a new edition of that, which again follows this question idea that there's the text from Peter, the ideas from Peter, and then in the margin, discussion points, things for you to talk about, disagree with, which he would love, and agree with some of them. So what I've tried to do, and I really do apologize for my voice and my brain not being at its brightest, what I've tried to do this evening is look at language in the context of all our lives, which are all different, of the present, the past, the present, and the future, being optimistic, hopefully this will get better, and just think, what should we be thinking through for ourselves for the next few months. So that's me. On the very, very last slide, the final one, Lucina, I've put my email address and yeah, at the bottom. The reason for the funny name Swan is that my company is called Swan Communication for reasons which I won't go into now. But so if anybody wants to email me, I'm pretty good at responding to emails, and I hope I might see some of you maybe at the IATEFL Harrogate conference when I'll be hopefully on Rob Hyatt's stand, and hopefully at the IATEFL Poland conference whenever it is. Anyway, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you for sharing your valuable expertise with us. You know, there is one question concerning your books, the two books that you offered at the end of your webinar, where the books could be ordered.
I knew I should have put that information on. Yeah. Do you know a company run by Regina? Oh God, I'll send you the email. I'll put it on an email, Lucina, immediately after this. There is stock in Poland, and they are available, both of the titles.
Okay, all right. So, and then if somebody would like to get that information, please send an email to me. Yes, and I will just forward the message from Susan to you.
What I can say is that both of them are used quite extensively in Hungary at the moment and in Slovakia. And you know, if anybody felt that either was useful for a set book for a course, we can obviously arrange a special price. Anyway, I'll put all that on an email to Lucina.
Okay, and you know, Susan, there is such a fascinating message for, I think it's for us. You girls are great.
Oh,
I am so happy about
Excellent. Oh, I think we should spread that around. Put it on your
Yes,
website.
of course, definitely, definitely. So that made that was Mihail, I think, right? So definitely, you've made my evening for sure.
A great partnership.
And I'm reading some more messages. Thank you messages.
Yeah.
Send you email, then at Susan. Yes, so we know we have arranged that so that nobody gets lost. I hope that tonight everybody has seen clearly the certificate, because Susan, I must share this message with you that in some of these webinars, certificate is always provided towards the end of the webinar. Yes. And in some of the webinars, some people don't notice it and complain about it. So I want all of you and each of you separately to notice the certificate to this webinar. So the certificate has been provided. And last but not least, I would like to thank the Honorable Vice President of IATEFL Poland, Rob Howard, for being with us.
Absolutely.
And being friendly and being optimistic. Okay, do we have anybody who would like to say anything or ask some questions, anything? We still have approximately 2 minutes. Rob wrote, wonderful to see you all.
Hello.
Good.
I do. Hello.
Hello, hello, go ahead, go ahead.
Hello, good evening. I'm David Chukwueke from Port Harcourt, Rivers State, Nigeria.
Nice.
Great.
To meet you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. I can hear you very well, so I'm sure everybody can.
I want to especially thank Suzanne Holden for a wonderful lecture she delivered. Thank you so much. And I also thank IATEFL for the wonderful program, the wonderful event. Is it possible to join IATEFL Poland? I mean, to be part of your organization there, IATEFL Poland.
Yes, yes, yes.
Of course.
Okay, okay. Because I enjoy your program you hold from time to time. So I want to be updated. I want to follow up from time to time. That's just my question. Thank you very much.
Great, great news.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other similar questions? Maybe. Nice to see your smile.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Rita has a.
Yes. Hello. Hello, Susan. Hello.
Hi,
Hello, Lucia. Hello. Well, I want to congratulate to give you my appreciation, very, very good appreciation, Susan, because I am a retired teacher. But for me, it's very important to stay focused on this kind of questions and context, because I think that when you are a teacher, it's the same when you are a parent. You'll be a teacher forever and ever, and so you'll be a parent forever and ever in your life, and so you never stop to be a teacher. And so it's really important for me because to stay motivated. So this is a very big key for me in order to build up something really important, okay? Because as you have said, language, life and language are strictly connected. But I think that a real good job from you and the other friends who are involved in this kind of discussions is to make teachers be motivated, because this is really important nowadays, above all after COVID. So thank you so much, Susan. Thank you so much, Lucina, because your job is really good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
My pleasure.
Grazie tante.
Oh,
Parlo italiano anche.
lo so, ho capito che sei una brava, bella, brava poliglotta. Allora, congratulazioni, Susan.
Senza voce.
Senza voce, vabbè, ma non ha importanza. Non ha importanza. tu puoi parlare anche senza voce e quindi è la stessa cosa.
Okay, some useful links have been added in the chat box. Please, everybody notice. I have so far I have attached the certificate 3 times. If someone has a problem opening it and downloading it, so 3 times
Brilliant.
the certificate has been downloaded. But very, very nice, useful links have been provided by Rob, by Ola. Yes, I think also Agnieszka. Yes. So please notice it in the chat box.
And Lucina, I will contact Regipio tomorrow and tell her that this has been done, just to alert her.
Okay, very well. Thank you. You know, you are such a well-organized person. Yes, you think ahead, backwards, in the present and ahead. You apologize for your voice, but believe me, I was really astonished how you managed, yes, to keep going throughout the webinar. So, you know, well done, really.
Good.
Now you deserve a rest. Yes, right, Rob? Rob
Yes.
has visualized himself at
Yes.
the end of the webinar. So thank you once again, Susan.
Okay.
A
Thank you.
wonderful webinar, more than 50 participants. I have to tell you this.
Fantastic.
Yes, so a huge group of participants. And the only thing that I did wrong, and I must confess it to, you know, to you and to Rob, I forgot to start recording it on our, you know, in the cloud. So I started recording
Yes.
approximately 20 minutes
Yes.
after the webinar began. So maybe we can use the live streamed version from Facebook. We will see.
Yes. Yes.
Apologies for it.
Yeah.
You know, when, you know, the number of tasks for me,
Oh.
a person like me, turned out to be too many, and my sincere apologies for it.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Okay, so let's wave goodbye and let's close the room.
Bye-bye.
Can I say something?
Bye-bye.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
sure, you can say something. Yes, of course.
I think that you have sent the wrong link, because it's a membership link. It's a membership link. It's not about the certificate one.
No, the certificate was attached in the chat box. Yes, so
Yes, I know, but we can't see. We can't see it. We only see a link that connects us with the membership page.
so maybe it's your problem, because when I attached the certificate for the first time, some people wrote thank you. For example, Mihail wrote immediately after I attached the certificate. I attached it 18 minutes past 9, and Mihail wrote to me 19 minutes past 9, thank you. Yes, so I assume that most of the people, maybe it's due to the device that you are using, but I assume that most of the people
Okay.
download.
Okay, we are a lot of us can't see the link, but thank you.
Okay, 3 times. Yeah, it's not a link, by the way. It's not a link. It's the certificate. Yes, the certificate is downloaded as a document. Yes, and then you have to click on it, open it up. Yes, and then you download it. I'm doing it. In fact, I'm doing it right now. Yes, I'm doing it right now. I am downloading it in my post, so on my email. Yes, and I am sending it to myself. Yes, and I have sent it, and I'm sure that in a moment I will receive it. That's the way I did it. So I tested it on myself, yes, just to make sure that it works, and it works. Okay, so thank you all, and
Bye-bye. Susan,
Bye-bye.
stay safe. Susan, stay safe. Stay safe.
I
Okay?
will. And
Yes,
you too.
and
Oh,
healthy,
you've learned
and
new
healthy.
language. Ciao, ciao.
Stay safe and healthy. Yes.
Bye-bye, Lucina. Stay safe,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
and
Bye.
thank you so much. It was really, really interesting. Thank you, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you also.